Okay, I was able to find the capacitor I needed to replace, and what I'm going to do is put in the new capacitor here. You got to make sure you place the capacitor in the right direction. So the black labeling here on the side of the strip, that's going to be your negative side, and the other side is going to be your positive. And on the way the board is laid out, right here is going to be the negative end right here, and this would be the positive hole right here. And we're just simply going to push them down in, flip our board over, and what I do is I just kind of bend it a little so it's kind of holds it as I go to make the solder point I need. And I once again prep my solder gun. I'm going to clean off the tip and prep it again with a little bit of solder on the tip. It kind of cleans it. You want to have a good clean tip. And the trick to soldering is, number one, prep that tip. Number two, prep the tip. Number two, you're going to quickly just kind of warm up the area. It doesn't take long at all. Just kind of warm it right up at that area there, and you tap it. Just a quick little, that's it. Just like that. And same thing over here. We just heat it up first, and we apply our solder. So our solder is on there. Now the other problem we have here on this one here is our trace lines are missing. So like I said earlier, what I would do is just solder where needed a new connection basically. Instead of finding a thin piece of metal, we're not going to do that. We're gonna cheat. We're going to take, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a resistor, which I have plenty of, and what I'm going to do is solder it where it needs to be soldered. So I know this connection point right here leads over to this connection point there, which of course leads over to these others here. So I'm just going to solder this point to that point right there, and what that's going to do is complete that part of the circuit. And then I'll just end up snipping those tips off right there, so it's easier to work with if I just leave the whole resistor in place to begin with. So I'll just kind of bend it. You don't want to solder it in such a way that it makes connection to any other points, like its neighboring resistors and diodes and whatnot. So okay, in this case here, looks like it's in a good spot, so I'm going to go ahead and heat my tip up. I already cleaned it. Quickly just heat that point up there first, and put a dab of my solder there. So now that point is on there, and the same thing here. I'll just put a little bit on first, hold it down to the point I want to weld it or solder it to, and I'll just quickly put another dab down there. So now that part of the circuit is completed, and what I'll do is I'll just take a pair of tweezers. These are used to cut cuticles off your fingers and whatnot, so I'm just going to push that down a little though, and then I just snip it off right here. Snip that point off there. And same thing here, I'll just go ahead and snip that extra tip that's hanging out off. There we go. So it's good, nice and firm on there, so it's not going to go nowhere. And the next area I see where there's a problem is where the board was burnt right here. Right along the area there. You can see the coating is burnt off. I believe the connection is still fine there. Matter of fact, I'll just go ahead and test it real quick with a multimeter here. And what I'm going to do is on the multimeter, I'm I'm just going to put it on tone, basically, to test my continuity, basically. And when I touch the two ends, if they're toning out, giving a beep, I know the connection is good. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Set my multimeter where it needs to be. Okay, so it's where it needs to be, and I'm going to touch the tips of gear first to make sure it's going to do what I need. Okay, so that completes the circuit there. Alright, so I know that part, this part of the board here traces and goes over to here. So I know that board is good. That point of the board is good. It's not shorted out. I know the line I made over here is good, and it's good all the way to the other connection points. You want to make sure it's not shorted out, but quickly just, doing something like that. It's not affecting the board whatsoever by testing other points. The other point that's messed up is going to be from this point to this point. You can see the trace line is missing there. So that's the next point we want to trace over and make the same connection. So because this is still showing good, I'm not gonna go ahead and make a jump from there to there. It tells me the line is still fine. So I'm gonna do the same thing. Take another resistor. I'm just using resistors once again because I have an abundance of these guys and I hardly ever use them. So I'm gonna place my resistor there and just kind of wrap it around a little bit, and we'll snip off the tip again. Let's see. Matter of fact, I know my fingers are probably in the way of the video a lot, but I'm using my phone, so okay, so there we go. Once again, I'm going to clean the tip of my solder gun off. I'm going to prep it again so it's good there. And I'm going to make the connection here, heat that up first, and it doesn't take long at all. I mean, a quick dab on it is good enough. You don't want to overheat your capacitor or any other components that you may be soldering on there, because then you can end up damaging them. They're really designed for a quick solder on and off, so that's why it's good to prep first. But if you don't prep, it takes longer for the solder to grab on. So we're going to go ahead and prep that one. Okay, and that one sticks up a little, so I don't want it to stick up too much. So what I'm going to do is push it down. I'm just going to push it down a little, heat it up again, and just kind of push it closer to where I need it. Right there. Blow on it real quick if you want, and it'll quickly set it. Sometimes if it gets too hot, it'll take a little bit longer. Otherwise, it sets pretty quick. Snip off the ends you don't need. You don't want them shorting out any other part of the board. You want the circuit to operate the way it's designed to operate. So essentially what we're doing here is we're redesigning the circuit to do what we need without having to replace this entire board. A lot of times in electronics, it's just like one or two things that goes bad. Usually about one thing that goes bad, and people spend a lot of money just to replace it. You don't need to replace it. Especially on circuit boards, they're usually dead giveaways, like the capacitor. That on this one, that clearly showed that it exploded. So it's a dead giveaway, and then flip it over and you see the trace lines are missing. So I'm going to tone this out. I know my connection point there is good. But my next connection problem I see is right here. At this point right here, because it burnt off the trace lines right where your capacitor goes through the hole, the capacitor really isn't completing the circuit over here. And it is, but it's not. It's going to fail because you can see it moving right here. It's cracked. It's cracked right there at the tip. And to prove it, what you do is you just kind of hold it there, and you'll hear it bouncing around the tone, because it's shorted out right there. So once again, I see this connection point connects to here, it connects to there, it connects over there, somewhere way over here. I can either quickly jump it and connect it there, or I can quickly jump it and connect it here. Whichever the shortest run, however you want to do it, is fine, as long as it's staying connected, because the circuit board from trace lines from here to here are good. But at this point right here, it's broken. It's barely touching. As a matter of fact, it's broken from this point almost all the way through to the other end right here, and it's just hanging on right there. That's not good. We want to make a better circuit, so we're going to do the same thing. A lot of talking, I know. Okay. So same thing. I'm just going to take another extra resistor, place it where I need it. And I'm just using these resistors because instead of grabbing extra wire, these are actually perfect. They're nice and firm. They're going to do what you need them to do without a big fuss with using other wiring of sorts. Okay, so about like that. That should be good. So when I go to solder that down, I want to make sure that it's not going to be touching on its neighbor right next to it. In fact, that one's acting kind of weird. I'll just grab this other one and just do that. Set it right there. And I'll have to pause it, my video. Plug in my battery. My phone was about dead.